We should get a good idea of how the texture is looking with the specular map without having to jump in and render. So there, it's applied. So now we can start to play around with some of these attributes. We don't want reflections, which we can see here, so let's just drop those down. We can adjust these to widen that specularity. Just a little bit like so. We've got our specular colour in there. And why don't we add in a little bit of ambient colour just to bring up the base colour of the character. We only want it a little bit just to enhance that sort of skin tone and feel. Obviously you could pipe in a bump map if you wanted to add some wrinkles or creases in her lips, more details around her body. But for now I'm quite happy with this. What we could do to enhance her even further, well, let me just show you this before I move on. We have another image in here. So this is her with just the basic materials applied, and I think these are just applied with Lamberts. So you can see how flat she's currently looking in here compared to here using a blin. We've managed to get that specularity in. We've got the nice highlight on her lips there because that area of the texture was brighter. So we can take this a step further and make it look a little bit more stylized, and that's by adding a rim shader. So if I bring down the hyper shade like so, let's just scooch that over. So we have the blin here. Let's just move this around and we'll just graph that up. So this is the shader that we're working on currently here. Let's just go down to, what we need to do is create a, well, let's just take a step back. What we're going to do is create a rim shader, and what that is going to do is just add an extra highlight around the edge of the character, and that's going to enhance the silhouette. So for a rim shader we're going to use a ramp. So we'll go to 2D textures, go down to ramp here, just move that over. So this is just a ramp shader. It's going from blue to green to red. We don't want that many colours in, and we want to change it to U ramp, and you'll see why in a second. We want the top colour to be black, because what this is going to do is say the base colour here is a colour that's going to go around the rim of the model, and then it's going to fade to black, so it's going to fade to be transparent. So we'll drop that down and we'll leave it red just so we can see how it's affecting the actual model. If we add this in now into our incandescence channel, and you could add it into your colour channel if you wanted to, but incandescence will give you a much stronger, well, it'll give us a much stronger example so we can see it working here. If we add that into the incandescence channel, we can see here that it's not really working as a rim shader. It's just following the ramp, and it's projecting across the texture. So we need to tell Maya that we only want the information from around the side of the model. So what we need to do is go to our utilities, scroll down to our sampler info node here. Move that down, and what we're going to do is with our middle mouse button drag that over the ramp and go to other. What we're going to do is connect the facing ratio attribute here into our U coordinates here, and the facing ratio will basically tell us where the camera is looking, and depending on where the camera is pointing at, it will send back information on where the edge of the model is. So if we attach that to our U coordinates like so, and as you can see this is updated in here now, and like I say, if you haven't got this plugin, you could just do a quick render to see this in action. So there we can see the rim around the edge of the model. So now we can go in and edit our ramp and make it a more suitable colour. So let's just pick one of the part of the skin tone like that. Maybe we don't want as much of a rim, so we can drop that right down, just so we're just getting a subtle rim round there, or maybe more of a rim. And because this is fading to black, it's almost like treating it like it's fading to transparent. So there, you can see we've added that rim shader in there. And like I say, you can go in and you can add that to all the other elements in the scene. So if I bring back up our render, so this is how it was with just basic Lamberts applied to all the objects. And if we compare it with this here to the here, it's already looking a lot more interesting. So this is a render with rim shaders applied, and that's just giving it much more style, and it's enhancing the silhouette. Maybe the rims are a bit too strong, so maybe we want to add those in to the colour channel rather than the incandescence. But it's entirely up to you then, how you want your image to look, how you want your character to look, and it's just a matter of taste really. So now you've applied a rim shader to your main skin, you can then go in and apply it to the hair, your elements of clothing, and this is of course if you want it on the clothing. If you don't, now you know how to do it and create it, you can apply it to wherever you like. And just so you could leave the character there. We've got a nice looking character. She's set up with some nice shaders, and the rim lighting is just picking out those edges and just giving her a bit more of a cartoony style. But what if you wanted to make the skin a little bit more realistic by using Maya's subsurface scattering? Well, as you can imagine, that's could be a whole tutorial in itself, but what I'll do is I'll just briefly skim over the setup. And then as an example, we can see here, here's the skin with subsurface scattering applied. It's a lot softer, and as the name suggests, the light is, rather than just reflecting off the surface, which is what it is essentially doing with our blend shaders here, she's looking a lot more doll-like here and a bit more plasticky. Here the light's being absorbed by the model and it's being scattered beneath the surface, and that's why it's called subsurface scattering. So we can drop this down. Let's just turn off this renderer. So in this scene I have lots of different things set up. I have the subsurface scattering layer here. As you can see, for some reason the texture for the backscatter is showing up. So all I'm going to do is just quickly run you through the shader setup. So basically we have our diffuse layer. The diffuse colour here just points to our diffuse map, and you have the weight, which dictates how strong that diffuse map is. We have our subsurface scattering layer, and all this is your different layers of skin. So epidermal is your upper layer of skin, subdermal is the layer beneath the surface, so this is where a lot more of the scattering goes on, and backscatter is the texture you can see here, and that dictates which areas light can pass through. So you see this a lot in your ears, your fingers, and just the thinner areas of flesh. And obviously these can be piped through to textures as well. And in this example, I've just used the diffuse colour directly in the epidermal scatter colour, and then you can dictate the weight and the radius, which is how much the light spreads. Subdermal, if I just view this, this is just a more saturated version of our diffuse map, but it's blurred, and you could also reduce it a little bit because we only want sort of the hints of the colour, and that's just piped into there. And then backscatter, as you could see, already applied here. This just dictates, like I said, which areas light can travel through and what colour that light will be. So around here we have the ears, I've got this red on them as well, and around the fingers and toes. And again, you can play around with the weight and the radius and everything on there. Specularity, again, this is just like we did with our blin. You've got your primary specular colour, which is piped through to our specular map. You have your overall weight, And then you'll notice there are two specular channels here. Your main one is your main specular pass, the one that you would normally use on any sort of shader. This gives you your sort of broader specular highlights. The secondary specular colour, this will give you your smaller specular highlights, like you would get more on the lips or on your nose and cheeks, around the eyes, that sort of area. And again, you can play around with the weight and the shininess and the edge factor on those. You can pipe in a bump shader, and like I said, there's a lot more things that we could go into, a lot more depth we can go into with this particular shader. And in a recent issue I did a Q&A on subsurface scattering, which does go into this a little bit more detail. So if you're wanting to explore that route, I suggest you go back to that particular issue, hunt out that Q&A and have a look at that article. So when you've played around with that and got your subsurface scattering sorted out, you should be looking at something like this. But you could also take this a step further and add in a subtle rim lighting, which we have here, and as you can see, that is just picked out those edges again, just like we did before, and also brought her back to looking a little bit more stylized. So this are our blend shaders with rim lighting. She's looking a bit more plasticky, but then again, that might be what you want from your sort of doll stroke actress. We have basic subsurface scattering, which looks a lot more natural, softer skin, and then we've also added in a rim shader there, just to bring back that style. And the rim shader is just attached to the ambient colour. You can't attach it to the diffuse colour or any of these down here because it just doesn't show up. So if you use it in the ambient colour, you can just see it in the sample here. It's just another ramp, just as we did before, and that just brings that, just bring that back, and that just brings you in that subtle ramp shader, rim shader there.